Good morning. I am higher vibrations, and so are you. And today's conversation is going to be a handful of different people. They're all going to be around in a little bit. And so we're just going to get started. There's a lot to do with blue and water and ocean and all of the things having related to the consciousness of water and how the consciousness of water is becoming more and more accessible. The code and the memory that's contained in the water, the crystals themselves containing vast quantities of data and knowledge through the cosmos of just all things. And this water, that is 70% of who you are in this body, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less, but sure enough, there you are. And connecting to this water, it's an organism. When we understand what it is, then we realize how when we choose to, we can interact with our water in a way that's more beneficial, and we can choose what it is that we want the water to help us do, instead of feeling like a victim of circumstances. We bumble through life. Most of self-talk and all this low self-worth talk, even internal dialogue, meaning like just thoughts. You're not actually saying it with your voice. These self-diminishing words actually code the frequency of the water that is you. This 70% of you, this is a vast amount of your body. I think that's almost exactly the same. I'm pretty very close to the same with the water having to do with, in contrast, your body versus the body of Earth. It's very interesting how a lot of these things line up, and so too do all the minerals that you need. Are they contained within these oceanic bodies? This mineral salt, like the Celtic salt and the Himalayan salt, the pink salt. You get a lot of this stuff from it. So anyway, going back though, there's some really exciting things that just happened regarding water that I find to be super fascinating, and it's information that I didn't see until after we set this particular show. Excuse me. I expected there to be a few people here right now, so like usually I'm a little bit more prepared hydration wise when I'm alone. Is that so? Mount Rainier, the volcano in Washington. Oh, Jeanette's here. Awesome. Welcome, Jeanette.
Hello, my camera won't work for some reason,
That's okay. That's okay.
so I'll work on it. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. I was just telling them, getting ready to tell them, um, this just like 20 minutes or an hour ago, I found out all this stuff about water that's happening after we already set this topic for today. So I think
Oh,
this is really interesting.
yeah. Oh, I look forward to hearing what you have to say.
All right. Welcome, and just chime in
Thank
whenever
you.
you want, because I won't have the visual cues of you. I I won't know when you're getting ready to talk, so just butt in. I mean, just push yourself in. Will you please?
I will. I'll
All right.
definitely do that, but I'll also try and work on. I don't know why it's not working, so
Okay. Okay.
another
Thank you.
technical issue as normal. So
That's where we are right now. That's the end.
that's
We're
right.
not quite Mercury retrograde yet, but we're just about there. I mean,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So there's a couple of things happening. I mean, well, there's a lot of things happening, and it has to do with water. I mean, well, first of all, like um, just this past. So I know that they're in Australia, Jeanette. You
Hmm.
guys have been having a lot of forced flooding, and it's like very just all of a sudden a huge quantity of water. Like the only way something like that would occur if it was if someone like released a stream of water, that was being held back. And
Yeah.
um it's happened here too, just recently in three locations in this continent, like the North Carolina, a new one in North Carolina,
Right.
um that those quartz mines. And then so that's the rain, the water. And then there's the flood in Texas that happened. Having a flood in a place like that is, I mean, and they had like 25-foot water coming at them,
Yeah.
like with less than
Yeah.
an hour warning, you know. But that's similar to what you guys had to go on in Australia for a while. That's actually when I first started talking. Also, was when it was really starting to happen. And then I'm just gonna throw all these things out there, and then we're gonna like back up and let you guys welcome, Car. I'm glad you're able to join us. The other part of it is also the so we have all this volcanic activity happening, and the synchronicity of the what they're called, the ones that happen today, is Mount Mount Rainier. This is in Washington. This is actually a big one. This one, it's been quite some time since it's um, like had any activity. I think it was the 1700s. I could be wrong, but anyway, so there's that one. I'm reverberating back from you, or over there. Just so you know, Jeanette, I don't know how to fix that. How do I take
I
this?
might jump out and jump back in and see if I can get my camera to work anyway. And
Okay.
see, I'll be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Look forward to it.
Okay.
I didn't mean to. So, but then on top of Mount Rainier, then the other one that's in Guatemala is Volcán or Volcán de Agua. It's volcano of water. Is the other one that's going on for right now. And it's like really interesting that all, and it's like the way that they're lined up. So the one in Guatemala is like perfect trajectory. If you follow the path, there's like some, you know, how you guys, what's that called? What do you guys call that, Car, when you do the longitude and latitude, like the line?
Yeah, well, the Latin long. Yeah.
You guys just know that stuff so much over there, and that's why I'm just like, I just wanted to add a vocabulary for the rest of us, because like most people don't know those things, at least the ones that I've known in this country, in the states that I've been in. But maybe we're just weird, but I just find it really fascinating how those in the area that you live in tend to know their Latin long.
Yeah, it's a real thing, I guess, around the coast. Like even where I am, the town's name is 42 degrees south, as much as the town's name.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. And it makes a lot of sense if you think about it, because, you know, talking about water, you this place that is Australia, and then like all the islands and things connected to it, um, there it's mostly unpopulated by a human. It's like these small little pockets, you know, speckled all around like certain part, but they're always on the coast. Like I don't see any population in the middle at all, or even close to it, you know. And so I guess, and what I'm saying is, you're the country or the continent, the landmass that is Australia and stuff, is the same size or even bigger than North America. And people don't really know that usually, because how they draw it on the map, they make it look so small. And even though that country is so massive, you guys are like only like 2% of our population or something like that.
Yeah, it's incredible how connected we are to, you know, with the amount of similar rock and geology that's in America to Australia.
Yeah.
You talk about the middle of Australia, and I remember driving through there, and there's a lot of tunnels, a lot of inner ground, and you know, song lines and water portals that come down, that have just, you know, made their way over time. And yeah, I can feel a lot of them connected to America. So
I feel
it's,
that too. There's like almost a ribbon that's underneath all things, you know, like kind of like the lines that the chords that, like, you know, follow the ocean's floor, and that's actually what we use instead of satellites for our internet and our electricity and all kinds of different communications. And but I find this really fascinating that most of those lines that are under the ocean like go along, they all cross or intersect Australia. And I feel like it's like it has to, how a circuit, like electricity, you mess with the circuit, you have to make the circuit, it has to have a place to disperse, right? It has to give it a path. And it's like connecting into the Australian continent feels like it's a circuit.
It's funny you say that, because I went down a similar rabbit hole where there's a volcano just near here, and it's an ice volcano, and I could just feel it processing the electromagnetic energy of the earth. And it makes sense. If Australia is the solar plexus of the earth, it would be like the center point for processing a lot of things.
Yeah. Okay, I gotta tell you something. I just randomly can't. You brought it back. I forgot all about it. When I discovered the first time that I saw it, I didn't always see it, but then we got off grid far enough that I could see it. In the night sky, a glow, almost ghostly, faint glow, and it's a pattern. It creates a grid above you. And I saw Bray bring up grid, and you were talking, and you reminded me, both of you, that the realization that we were seeing a reflection of the ocean in the sky, and that it's the Latin long kind of concept. And if it's the Latin, if that's true, you were a mariner for a really long time, so you probably have a lot of code about water.
It's so funny you just brought up the sea and the sky, because I had this amazing experience once. I was just on watch. It was really late at night. The sky was full of stars and the sea was full of luminescence. And I had this moment where I couldn't tell what was above and what was below, because they look so similar. And it just felt like exactly what you said. Oh, this is a grid. It's, this is my playground. What do I want to see? What do I want to create? I really, it's really a playground. Yeah. My first fairy experience was at sea, and I was quite surprised to meet a fae in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that because I thought I would meet it in the I love gardening, but then I realized, well, under the ocean there's all this land, and the fays reside there too, and play.
Wow,
So yeah.
that's amazing. Hey, what was it like? Can you recall enough to describe what it might have looked like?
The fairy or the fae.
Yeah.
They like being called fae, so I hear, but
Yeah, I try to do that too for the same reason. It's fun. Yeah. Go on. Excuse
really,
me.
I totally remember, because it kept coming to me. I'd be on the bow of the ship in the middle of the night, after a dirty watch on deck, trying to dry my hair, and and it would look like a shooting star, but then it would come down and hover around deck, and it was always blue and orange. Yeah, it always came as blue and orange, and it always would fly across the ship's mast, and these are 200-meter ship, and it would just be flying around it, and it just opened my heart with so much joy and wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's fascinating. I've never told anybody that, because the colors. But these ones I didn't meet till I moved to the land of many waterfalls. And there was this one place that we were next to a lot, and we went to a lot. It was called Long Lake. And it was amazing. So there was some Tartarian type bridge work and stuff out there. and like there was some pretty cool stuff. But anyway, that's who came there. And the fact that you brought up water, and I'm like, I wonder if they're just the water ones or some, but it's like, I remember thinking the contrast of the color, because the orange would kind of lighten more of a yellow a little bit sometimes, and then it would darken, deepen to be like a darker orange. It was the most fascinating thing. And the fact that you told that part, that's really
Oh,
cool.
oh, that's so reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
neat. I
yeah,
like nighttime ones. The nighttime ones are mischievous. They're up to no good.
yeah. That there is the saying, "Don't piss off the fairies." Um, so it's kind of like the goblins. They make me be very mindful,
Yeah,
but they do like being cheeky, which brings me back to my cheeky self too, and not to be too serious.
right. Yeah, why take yourself so seriously? I know it's hard. It's at first, that's what we were trained to do. It feels like that's part of growing up in this world, is to be taught not to do that, and so then we have to unteach that teaching, But
Yeah.
it's fascinating because um, I find more and more that the uh, goblins have been coming up. So I was wondering if you wanted to explore, or at least maybe you can tell people what kind of characteristics do a goblin take, like not only just physical, but like I know about the words and stuff, and that's really fun topic too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes for me they were a little bit scary at first, because they are a more shaded color. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But they're very, very ancient, and a bit tricky too. Like I really notice when they're about, if I'm in the wrong mindset or about to spell the wrong words out of my mouth, all of a sudden I'll smack my head or something will happen. I even had like a bodyboard's one of the lanyards like smack me in the face one day when I
ah,
was getting caught in thoughts. Um, so that's one characteristic, is definitely if all of a sudden I'm stubbing my toe or doing something like that. But the
yeah,
characteristics, you think green, I think green goblin, that sort of, um, yeah, longer features.
yeah.
Definitely have the longer pointed ears,
Hmm.
the longer chin, the longer nose. Um, they're very tall, very, very tall.
Yeah,
Um, and slender. Uh, Always see them in a robe. Uh, and it's usually just a flash of what I see. But yeah,
there's
it took. Yeah, yeah. It was actually, I think Elsa mentioned the goblins, and a lot of the things I had been seeing, like just knowing, not to be scared, and you send them love, and they still stick around. So
yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah,
can be a very giddy interaction. Hey, it's 3, 2, 1, blast off. Um, it could be like, like you said, it depends on your alignment, your intention in the moment that you're in too. It's got a lot to it. I find that to be true for all of these different, and this is something I've been kind of like waiting to ask this part. And so if I'm asking you questions that, I don't want to put you on the spot, but um, and so, but a lot of these interactions I've ever had, like they've always been away from society, or at least a bit, away from society. I had some experiences when you're like in a neighborhood and they were coming in your bedroom kind of through the windows and stuff, but there's still a nature kind of anyway. Um, So because of this, I mean, obviously the Fey realm is going to hang out, farther away from the highly populated areas, especially when the vegetation starts to be, messed up. I add that to say, I wonder how many of these others have you, perhaps because you've been at sea and away from all technology and population, how many different otherworldly beings, quote unquote, do you think that you've seen, or is there any experiences that you want to talk about regarding that?
So many, so many. Just most recently, I guess, in this house, there was a lot of pixies and brownies, to the point I was actually leaving food out for them.
Wow.
And yeah, and I even bought a little fairy table with chairs. But the brownies were great. I actually was a brownie when I was a kid, which is like a scout.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're the organisers, the feng shui. They see the power of what you see before you is your balance and your path, and so they really got me in that. But yeah, lots of things. I most recently spoke to a tree. That was crazy, of all
Tell me.
things. So I was in the bush and I did what you said about putting your hands on the tree and connecting with it. And all of a sudden, I felt it in distress, and it spoke to me and asked me to help its friend. And I looked over the bush, and there's another, and these are 100-year-old gum trees. There was wire cutting into this gum tree. And so it asked me to help its friend. And so I went and got some pliers and cut the wire away. And
Yeah.
I just felt the joy of, just the empathy it had for wanting to help its friend.
Yeah.
And I think all these beings have that in their own way. We're all
Yeah.
sparks of source. So, um, you know,
Wow.
yeah.
Did you get a name?
Pardon?
I don't know, but I tend to get, so people tell me different names of their trees and stuff. Did it tell you a name of itself?
No, I have to ask.
Yeah, let me know. I love these have you tried speaking to it and asking it to come to follow the voice and touch your face?
No, no.
Okay, you can do this. It's so fun. It's so fun. It's there's these things that you can do that you get immediate gratification, and then you teach yourself to trust yourself, and then you validate. Anyway, so you get over, and it's best to do when it's not breezy or windy, because then our logic says, oh, it was just because a gust of wind just happened or something. And this is actually like a thing people are doing all over the place. They're recording. You put the camera so you can see that nothing's causing it, anyway. You get close enough to the branch, the limb, that, about that far away from your face or so, but that could possibly extend to touch your face. And, it would have to come up. A lot of these branches people are using. Anyway, you say, you start talking to the tree, and then, like, say things like, will you touch my face? Will you follow the voice? Do you hear my voice? Come to my voice. And you watch the branch, and what it does, it's so much fun. Mine too. Is it doesn't like go and touch you. It winds itself. It's like it's winding just that branch, just the twig on that part of and it's like and then it'll kind of try to find you, and so you got to keep talking. It knows it can follow your voice. It knows exactly where your voice is, and it'll touch you. And that is like the proper introduction, and now you know the tree. It's like really fun, just like you do when you're kids. You know how you walk down the path and there's all those trees, and you always put your hand out, let the leaves touch you and give you that beautiful energy. That's what you're doing, is introducing yourself. I didn't know that was what we were doing. And it's fun. You should try it. I hope you do.
Oh my gosh, I'm so going to try that. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you mentioned about the talk being about water, because, you know, the trees are full of water, and so are all these beings. They're all different aspects of source and liquid, and yeah.
Yeah. In fact, aren't gum trees? I want to kind of grab an image on one real quick so I can show people. Aren't gum trees like the ones that have like a real swollen base, and they have this? They look peculiar to me, but we don't have anything like that around here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is quite a big base. They get quite large.
Yeah, it just has the ones I've seen have been like usually like really in like the I can't find a good image. I'm gonna move on from that. But usually they're like deep in the desert, the drylands. Then you see like this real swollen base, and you think to yourself, that's where the water comes from. You know, like it's it's very significant to note a lot of these like we call them mountains. If you pull back far enough, they very much appear to be the stump of a vast and mighty tree. Incredibly. I mean, and the fact that there are so many like that, I mean, a surface like that isn't created in nature. Like that tabletop mountain thing that you see. And this is something that spirit showed me, and then like literally 45 seconds after that a short popped up on Facebook or YouTube or someplace saying the same things. Is that, well, what a lot of these trees, especially if they're old enough, do is they draw the spring water up from the depths of the earth. And so when you cut the tree, it starts to spray, and like it brings this water up to us. This is how a lot of people would find these springs. And it's also important to note the contrast or comparison to that, because that was the video. They were like, hey, look, this is what people do. And anyway, is that most of these tabletop mountains also have some random waterfall system. Like, where's that water coming from? It's coming from up. Has anyone ever went to that up and seen that it's coming out of the middle of an old stump? Isn't that fascinating?
It's incredible. The root system, you can just imagine how it's all interconnected, you know,
Yeah.
like the blue vein mushroom system. You know, I guess it's the same with the water system. You know, it has its own linkage as well.
Yeah, it's consciousness. And it is most of us. Like we are, most of us are somewhere between 70 to, I heard just the other day that some people are up to 90% water. I don't know how that would exactly work, but like, I don't know. I have to check your source, like, but,
Yeah.
at the very, I just think it's funny because then she tried to absorb that fact. I'm like, that may not be actual fact. um,
You
that's a
just
lot of
see a big
water.
blob of water.
What was that?
I just picture a big blob of water, you know, like 90%. It's trying to get my brain around it.
Right, like it's like the aliens versus monsters cartoon where
Yeah.
that guy named Bob, Seth Rogen's voice, he starts going out with Jello, with pineapple in it.
That's right.
Anyway.
Oh, that's such a funny image.
That's the thing that bothered me the most about living in Utah. A lot of you guys know I lived for 22 years. I lived in and around Utah. Sometimes I would wander back and wait and come back, but is that they would always at these gatherings they'd always make two things. They make this thing called funeral potatoes, which is like canned tomato or canned cream soup with like store-bought like potato hash browns mixed with cheese and seasonings and like baked like a casserole. Like it's like funeral potatoes. Anyway, but then they kept trying to give you Jello with foreign objects in it, like this debris. They put carrots and stuff in Jello, and they're like, eat that. Anyway,
It's funny.
you were saying something really interesting, and I totally changed it to this silly story about Jello. Well, what
Good.
happened inside me is it reminded me of that, and then I remembered that the green Jello was a really important symbol of Utah, because the Utahns really seem to like green Jello. I never was one of them. 333 right now, and that links us to the Olympics and the rings, because when we had the Olympics come to Salt Lake City, when I lived there, the little pin was the green Jello, and because it was like the local, like, thing. And that was when the Winter Olympics came to, and that year it didn't snow. It just stopped. The snowing stopped. And so then everybody got together and prayed, and then they had such a dump that people couldn't even get to the Olympics. Anyway, why did I bring all that up? I feel like that was a different topic. But there's something we're going to kind of jump into at some point about the rings and the links and the Olympics and the river. I always say that wrong. Thames.
The Thames River, I think you said it
Yeah,
right.
isn't that the one that goes through France?
Not. I think so. I can't say
Sorry.
100%
Anyway.
on the spot. Thames, yeah, the Thames River, yeah. I think so.
Yeah, there's something about this. I don't remember why that's important. It just came up while I was talking. I'm sorry. We should go back to talking about something. You don't live in France. You live in Australia.
Yeah, but this is all. I always think everything happens for a reason. So, you've brought up the rings and you brought up the River Thames. Like, this is all, letting it sink in. I mean, the rings, there's five rings, isn't there?
Yeah. And the one for France, the Olympics in France, because they did this like burlesque kind of theme with it. That's how I translated it. I use night vision, or whatever it's called, when you do the night, like, background, everything's black. And because of that, the pictures that they used to make the Olympics icon for that year, for the one in France recently, was it made it so the fifth link was broken, and all of the links, if you looked at it, they were all broken. It made them break, and that was a huge download that freaking happened. And Spirit, it was the one that got me to even look, and that they were like, this is really important. And what I was looking up was not this Olympics that just happened, but one many years before. Almost, in fact, it turned out 100 years to the day before. And so Spirit, I wasn't connected to news. This was all Spirit. It was a whole thing. And there's something about this that I'm supposed to unpack that I've forgotten to unpack, and they just came up just now while we were talking.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot there of the breaking and the rings, and you've got the 100, so something about that. The one with the 2 zeros, that's a line. And I guess for one of the rings to be broken, to me, that's building anew, restructure. So that's exciting. There's
seen through the shadow self, because it was the night one.
Yeah. Because that's a big thing, seeing through the shadow self, because we all have the two sides. So, that's where our power lies.
Yeah.
Is seeing the shadow and bringing light to it, and bringing shadow to the light, because no shadow is 100% shadow. It's only 99.99%. There's always one spectrum of light. So
Right.
Anything that happens has purpose if we see the
Right.
beauty in it. So, yeah, that sounds like an unbreaking of a big cycle of the Olympics of, I think Jeanette has spoken about the Titans, and yeah, it's a big breaking down of systems, mystical insights. That was Camp Mystic, that was the one that had the flood. I noticed her name when she come up, very symbolic. So, yeah, there's a lot in the, I guess, the breaking of the rings, the breaking of the dams, and opening up the new and building the
Yeah.
new structures together.
They had named 2 days ago. They had named that day, the 7/7 portal, anew, ANU, and the fact that you just brought that up, because okay. I should probably do this part too for anyone listening. And we just got through a big bloop of energy. Like, we just did it. Good job. um, those of you who are looking at the Schumann and all that kind of stuff, you can see it. It's very clear what, if you kind of just suspend all the logical reasoning behind figuring out what certain graphs mean or don't mean, and just like absorb what it feels like it means. It's a whole different story. It's really cool. But we had at between 2 and 4 a.m. There was a pause, a blackout in the Schumann. It was going from erratic activity to blah, like right after that, like blackout, and I mean, the red and the yellow and the orange was all over, like it was covered. There wasn't very much white or green to be seen, or that blue background that you see sometimes. Anyways, and we're lining up with all of this Neptune stuff going on, and Neptune's in connection with Artemis because of it's Neptune's in Aries. And then what's Neptune, dude? It's Poseidon, and all of this body stuff's going on. And so, like, I'm just supposed to let you guys know, a lot of us are having a lot of stuff going on, a lot of ascension symptoms. Tomorrow's the buck moon, the full moon. Like, I've noticed some weird stuff in my body, weird, like pains that just like appear, like, and then go, and they feel kind of almost like a nerve type related stuff. So there's a lot, and that stabilization because we're going into Saturn retrograde on the 13th, and then Mercury retrogrades on the 17th, right after a conjunction of Saturn and the moon. So there's just a lot of shifting. But what I've gotten is this particular month, now that we've gotten through that little bloop period, that it's just going to be like, now it feels like we've been released to recess, like, now it's time to go, like, practice what you just learned how to do. Go play, and so a lot of us in inner dwellers or hermiting people, are feeling also the desire to, like, reach out and connect to the outside world, even those that you don't know in, like, spiritual way, for some purpose, as we have the 70% of the others that are to awakening now. So we're meant to just be in their energy, because our energy helps them. So anyway, that's where that anxiety sensation is coming from for a lot of you. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out as well. Thank you for letting me just bramble for a second. Are you having anything crazy happening with your experience as an ascending individual?
Certainly. There's always something. I guess that's the joy of the path is, you got your comfort zone, and the awakening is always a little bit out of that. But yeah, I noticed, like you said, with the Schumann, it was stop and start a lot. And I felt like I just, was just cancelling timelines and really cleaning up things that I hadn't been able to see in the past. And even a bit of tunnel work. I went into a meditation recently, and that was really profound, just to find, just igniting that light in my core and rebirthing out. I had to do that so many times, and to find parts of myself again. And like you said, just the big burst of energy afterwards. I've had a lot of energy, like just running around in the bush and wanting to play. And it's a Capricorn moon. I'm a Capricorn rising, so it's really productive energy. I like it.
Yeah, it is. I've gotten a lot done too. But it's like I feel kind of almost ADHD style, accomplishments where it's like I'm like doing a lot of different things, but you have to stop and start. But like, and there's a lot too that because Jupiter just went into Cancer too. Or you said Capricorn, but Jupiter just went into Cancer, and that was significant. I made a note about that because when Jupiter was in Cancer, it was also in 1776, and it's got a lot to do with this, like, the energy of what they call liberation. So it feels like it's an undoing of a false history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The Cancer is water. So you got Capricorn, and then you got Cancer, and then you pull in some, Artemis, Neptune, and like there's a lot happening right now, and it all seems to all go back to water.
It really does. I mean, the crab is a really great symbol. With the hard outer shell we've all had to build for so long to survive as a light being in a hardened world. And now we're transforming that and bringing the soft outer and dismantling the hardened shell. We've still got it there for when we need it, which is really great to know that never again, will we ever be a victim, because it's a choice. And the Artemis and the Neptune, I just had the symbol of the Neptune, his the Poseidon, the trident. That's what I wanted to think of. Yeah,
I always forgot it too, so that I ended up tattooing it to my psyche.
I had to get baptized by him once, King Neptune. It's like a whole ceremony. It's at sea. Like you can't cross the equator unless you've been baptized by King Neptune at sea, and it's a seafaring rule. And I always wondered about that. Why must one be baptized whilst crossing the equator? And I guess that's the Midgard, that's the water midpoint, that's the opening of his domain, I guess. Wow. Or where he resides and protects or oversees.
Pardon me.
No, that's it.
What type of a process would that be to get baptized at the equator? How would you get baptized?
So it's not very pleasant, but there she is. The main process is there would be a it's funny because it's the opposite of a normal baptism. A normal baptism, you have pure fresh water, but with a crossing the equator baptism, you generally have buckets of dead fish or scraps that's been out in the deck in the sun for a week, and you usually get tied, like your hands tied, and taken to the deck, and then you get dumped overhead with the scraps. And
everybody on the boat, or just the first time you cross?
Just the first time you cross.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was there wasn't many women at sea. I was working on cargo ships. I'd generally be the only one out there. So because of OH&S, they didn't use the rotted scraps with me. They actually used jelly and spaghetti, and made a jelly and spaghetti mix and dumped me with that. So it was a little tamed down.
Yeah. I wondered because the introduction to water at that point would be truly shaking the hand of Neptune, and so, or Poseidon. And so it's interesting that instead it's a byproduct of the sea instead of the sea itself. Not that you wouldn't
Yeah.
get tossed in the ocean, but maybe a bucket of it,
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's weird. I guess once you've been out there for a few months, you kind of forget that you're on the ship. I guess I was so connected with the ocean, you kind of feel like you're in it already.
Yeah.
Like you're a part of it. It absorbs you after a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. Jeanette, you made it back. I could see you've changed your device.
I did. Can you hear me okay?
I can
And
see
see me
perfect.
okay?
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
The computer just would not connect to the camera this morning. So anyway, I'm here. So I've missed all your conversation.
That's okay. Welcome. We've
Thank
talked
you.
about a lot of different stuff, but like one of the things that I'll just say it again because some people probably didn't hear it in the audience too is that there's a couple of things that just happened on a planetary level that is connected to a lot of things to do with water. Of course, there was 3 floods in this country, pretty significant ones, but something else that's just happened on top of that. And of course, I don't mean to just mention that and dismiss it. Anybody that's affected by that, my heart goes out to you.
Of course.
Truly.
Yeah.
As many of us understand what it's like to be in a world where there is these floods, especially those of you coming in from down under, is on top of that, then there's a volcano in Washington that hasn't erupted for quite some time. It's called Mount Rainier. Rain, and
Yeah.
Mount Rainier is actually a symbol of Seattle. Like when I lived there for all those years, the way they would judge the level of smog in the city that day was whether or not you could see the mountain. Like the mountain, and it was Mount Rainier. Anyway, this is like right there in if something really happened with that would be Seattle, and so there's Mount Rainier at the same time, all the way in South America, in fact, Guatemala, the same thing was happening. Now they're not erupting, they're having severe earthquakes and seismic activity that's indicative of pre-activity before something occurs. And this particular volcano, now I'm going to try to speak with a different language, so I'm not really going to say it very well, but Volcán de Agua. It's a volcano of water.
Right.
So we got
That's significant.
water, yeah. And so that just happened. We'd already set this conversation topic, and here we are. So, anyway, is there something that Jeanette, I'm sure you have a wealth of knowledge, and would you like to
just along the same sort of lines, and it's just the way that we say words and whatnot. But I still say Uranus. A lot of you say Uranus, but Kirsty was talking to me about that yesterday, and just the breakdown of that word, you reign us. So it's even within that changing of that planetary system, and knowing, that. Well, I don't know that we know, but it seems to be a bit of a patterning when that sign changes to what it is now, that there is significant rainfall. So, or solar flares, or, any of those sort of things that seem to trigger events. So, yeah, just looking at some of the words that we've got around us at the moment, it is really pointing towards a lot of rain or indication around the water.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Poseidon's Neptune.
Yeah.
And here we are, all this Neptune stuff's happening right now.
And I feel like it's the plasma, it's the water and the air and the fire. It's all of those elements. You're talking about Seattle and volcanoes. Well, that's on that ring of fire. So there's the ring again. It sort of keeps coming back to the same language all the time, and it's trigger, to try and trigger us into looking at the bigger, deeper meaning to some of these words that we do use. So that ring of fire is really ignited at the moment.
Yeah, and there's that actually links to Matrix. I like this too. I just gotta point this out. Like maybe the shit is coming up and out. That's the Uranus.
Exactly. Well, that's where we went yesterday as well. Obviously it's excreting what was the word? It's getting to the bottom of the depth.
Oh.
Yeah. It's bringing up the depths of the the body, whatever body that looks like. So it's triggering a lot of that water events, and we're 70% water, as they say, and then we're probably triggering the events.
I very much agree with you. I feel like that's completely correct and accurate. Like that's what we're experiencing. We're asking to have come, including celestial bodies, like including like the comets and asteroids and all those different types of things that we see. We very much are drawing them to us, as proven by what's called the evil axis. I'm so annoyed that it's even called that, but yeah, I mean, we're drawing it to us, because we need it. It's to help us.
Yeah, it's part of that movement. So
while you're talking. Sorry, I'm just going to say this. I'm going to show something while you're talking. Please keep talking. I'm just going to show the Dr. Emoto stuff. Please keep. You can keep talking.
Oh, yeah, no, that's yeah. Well, there you go, along the same sort of lines as the patterning.
Yeah. Oops.
It really does show you the power.
Yeah.
It's sending love.
Let's stop that sharing. That's a different code. That's from a different day. That
so
was
cute.
your puppets for anyone wondering. There was nothing nasty or bad about that. It was just not the topic. In fact, it kind of is. They're the ones that, with these finger puppets that Maddie placed on the desk, was code for Elsa. That meant that one of the main characters is the hippo, and the hippo is the one that creates the rivers, and the hippo is what I actually keep seeing, and Spirit keeps talking about. This country, this continent that I'm on, it needs hippos. I'm not gonna go like create this. It's just they're talking about the lack of hippos is what's caused the desert in the middle. In the middle of America, it's highly unpopulated, just like in Australia, but not to such an extreme, because they took the hippos away. They decided they were scary and bad and got rid of them. Hippos, they can't swim. They dig when they walk, basically, because they're so heavy, and they create the rivers. They draw the water, and not having them in this country is causing Death Valley to be Death Valley.
I just feel like there's a correlation to the hippocampus and the drawing out of the not flowing within the body, and how does that correlate, you know, as within, so without, that type of scenario.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much in that. Like the ship's way. You know, you to make the to work with the water, you've got to have the vessel in right working order. So the hippos need to be in their working order to create proper flow, and same with us. We need to be in right working order with, got our water levels topped up, our oils levels topped up, and everything's calibrated, and with meditation, and it creates a good path.
And you can be an active participant in the creation that you're in. The other part of this is that the synapses or the neural connections that happen are the rivers. And if there's a false synapsis, or it typically looks like either misfiring or firing when it's not meant to be, not making an arc connection like electricity arcs, as it jumps, is that having missing now these hippos in this continent, we no longer have a connecting arc. Like the rivers kind of become lakes, and then they kind of go disappear in the middle, and like this has been a big topic because we're in the year of the dragon. We had been in the year of the dragon, and this dragon energy was introducing itself, and that was when I discovered that some of these are homeless, these dragons, because they used to be rivers. I know that's really weird, but like a consciousness, it's bizarre. Do you guys know anything about what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's incredible you brought that up, because one of the first pictures Jeanette ever sent me was an Aboriginal paintings you have of the rivers, and it was the rainbow serpent and the goanna, and it was showing their song lines that then where they naturally sat, and yeah, it was pretty incredible. Exactly what you said.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
you had a great one with a crocodile. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's over there on the wall.
yeah. It's incredible. It was in a red river, and it just showed the creative, the birthing grounds
Yeah.
of that place. So I guess with yeah, the floods are hard, and I have been asking for more insight, prior to floods, like, so we can get a bit more heads up. It would be nice, because I really do want these dragons to come home, and I want them to be settled. But yeah, I guess maybe you just sent me a message. I'm not quite sure that everything as it should be, and everyone is protected. So yeah, I guess trust the process too.
Yeah. Trust the process. Know that, we all have this same, I feel the same way. You're just like, oh, give him back his home. Like, stop pulling your brother's hair. Kind of feeling when this stuff comes up. It's like, and then you kind of look around like, why isn't anyone else doing anything? Get him to stop putting peanut butter in that kid's ear. Or whatever it is. It doesn't seem like it really, when you pull back, it's not that big, but it is, because it creates a scar on Tara herself, and as well as those of us that are directly affected too. It's all of us are affected. And just like so earlier, Okay, wow, now I'm echoing. And now I'm not. That was weird. Um, is that we were talking about um, oh goodness, I got so distracted by the echo that I was trying to introduce something for Jeanette to talk about. Do you want to just talk?
I can just talk. Look, with the dragons, I feel like a lot of it's got to do with the changing of the land. So once the movement starts, then I think that, the dragons will come into a lot more awareness of, people that haven't even entertained those ideas. I feel like that's part and parcel of that land shift. Um, but even just looking at the sounds that the bodies of water make. So there's a lot of bodies of water around the world that actually have the word sound in it. So the Bermuda Triangle is called the Great Sound. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Really? Okay, I'm gonna try.
Yeah, so look into that, and it was taken over by the Navy. I can't remember when, if it was the 19th century, so 1800s sometime. But it's called the Great Sound. So they talk about sound also being lagoons as well, and like bodies of water. So, and that's because of
Babbling.
the resonance that comes from, the waveforms as water hits air or hits the elements. So even looking at some of the interesting names that they call things and linking that back to sound frequency, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it's all hidden within the words, and because we use the language in just such a literal sense, it's
yeah,
not until you start looking at like the etymology of the word sound and how that came to be, and even, I mean, I talked earlier in the week about the word opportunity. The first part of op is connected to orb. So etymology is connected to orb. So again, like an arc, or the light. And then you look at the word port, and you can break that right down to passage, and then right down to um, mountain passage. So, we start looking at the narratives, and Australia's all built on these tall ships. Are they tall stories about the tall ships? Because the actual passages within the land, you could walk, and people have said they walked, and
yeah.
literally in our brains we go, not possible.
Right.
So even just looking at some of the words, why they've named things, multiple meanings to words. You start looking at lagoon, and you think, okay, there was a interesting movie in the 70s called Blue Lagoon.
Yeah.
You just start looking at what is going on here, what has been woven, and just the pieces of the puzzles that we have missed within the language around water.
And that's the main name for the big giant theme park in Salt Lake City,
What's
like
that?
Lagoon. That's what it's called. And like, I've actually never went. Of course, I wouldn't at this point. Like, I have no interest in any of that. Any of that. Big people groups and lines and bad fried sugar, you know. But like, I just don't find any joy in that. She doesn't either. Thank goodness.
Yeah, it sounds very overwhelming, doesn't it?
Yeah, like if she was into it, I would make myself do it, and I would find a way. But I'm so grateful that she's not. Um, anyway, but it was a big joke is that I wanted to go. I wanted to go on the biggest roller coaster. And every year I'd buy season passes, and I bought people tickets, and all they had to do was, because I didn't have a car or a license, they had to drive, and like, and it wasn't that far, but it literally never happened. Everybody was hung over the next day when we were going to go, and or whatever, and like it just ended up for years and years and years. I never ended up going, and I'm so glad. But it was
Because
called
they were
the
harnessing your sound.
yeah. And then I grew up around the Puget Sound, which is there's a whole, and there's so much to this too, because so they hid the rivers of this area of, I mean, this country, especially where I lived before. Um, they hid the rivers, or excuse me, the waterfalls by damming it up, and that was the first clue, because if when these things become undammed, there's a lot of different things you can play with that one, especially with beaver. Um, but is that was taken wrong probably by some people in the audience. So right on, unintentional. Anyway, especially after that last Friday thing that freaking happened. Oh my goodness.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, I'm gonna stop. Is that when the waters were able to flow, I know, they revealed what was hiding underneath, and it wasn't just these seven. There's this one spot where I was living, near where I was living. There were 7 waterfalls, and all 7 of those waterfalls were underneath a dam. They were being hidden, and they were coming from a tabletop mountain. And this tabletop mountain is not a mountain at all. It's a stump. It's a tree. And I didn't even put that together. And that's what I was going to bring up before too, is this, I think I brought it up early in the call, is that Spirit showed me that. They were like, because I kept being like, where does that water come from? It just always comes from up. Like, where is it? And then this thing popped up, and it's showing you that if it's an old enough tree and it's all this different stuff, when you cut the tree, then it sprays all this water out. And it shows these tabletop mountains. It proves that these tabletop mountains are stumps of trees. And the spring water from the depths below are being siphoned up to the surface for those who need the clean drinking water. That's what their function is. That's why those trees were being cut down to begin with back in however long, was they were bringing up water sources. It had nothing to do with what ended up seeming to be. But isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, there's so much in that. I mean, they purposely don't plant gum trees near the dams here because their roots are so big and long, they'll break the dam walls.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about lagoons, and the first thing I thought was, we always say going to the loo, going to the toilet. Right. And somebody mentioned about giving the urine back to their waters to pass the DNA back. And, the body is, like a distillery. So,
Yeah.
What goes through is being purely distilled through the system. So, I'm not quite sure. Going to the lagoon, is something in that?
It's that body of water, isn't it? It's that same thing. But you start looking at the dams, and so the local dam to where I live, it's not even 20 years old, and it got a big crack in it the last flood 10 years ago. And so at the moment they're deciding they're going to build a whole new wall in front of it. So the dam is pretty much saying, no, you're not doing this. So I'm just waiting to see if the next wall is actually even going to be able to be built. Now that dam is called Paradise Dam because they built it on the town called Paradise, which was a gold town back in the day. So I feel like the dam's saying no. Like, she's like, no, you're not damming me anymore. Like, and then I look at some of these natural disasters that they tell us are a natural disaster. It feels like the water is coming out of the ground. As much as it's coming out of the sky, it feels like it's a dual movement. So there's a lot more body of water than what you expect because it hasn't fallen out of the sky per se. Exactly. It's come like a rush of water. So the dams are very interesting because it feels like at the moment a lot of the dams are cracking or breaking, and they structurally cannot fix them. So there's quite a few here in Australia that are probably not far behind this local dam of ours. They
Right.
are just cracking, and they're just going to give way.
Right. And then you got the same kind of stuff like Hoover Dam. Y'all know about Hoover Dam. It's like a thing. I know that it's not an accident that the first day of the main construction, a man died in there, and then on the last day, his son died in there.
Yep.
It's a bit of history that people kind of think, wow, that's coincidence, but I mean, that quantity, and there was the construction was over a vast number of years. Like I don't remember the years exactly off the top of my head, though. I remember the reference that the son was a child when his father died, and then he later on, growing up and becoming a worker too, kind of thing, But there's what some may call dark magic or something like that, connected to a lot of these forced. I looked up and saw we'd been on for 1 hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds just then.
I was
Like,
looking at
that's crazy. You saw it too. Anyway, so this shift of kind of seeing these structures as something that we want, because it's more convenient, especially for towns and stuff, because that's the problem, is these dams have been put up and then people move in, and then so now they're in the place that the path of the water used to be, and it's like, who's to say that they shouldn't? No one told them, they just went where there was a place to live. And so it's just this really annoying thing that now we have this mess, because we've been told since 2020 that the dams are going to break. And when the dams break, so too will the hidden sacred knowledge that is coded in that water. And that as we draw the spring of water down, it's coming down. We're the bottom part. We're the downside. And then when you go through the ocean, you're going up. Like, if you orient that way, and then looking at the map of the continents, same thing. East is up, not north. And then you can see what's in there. And it's all written in the water. How the water has had because of the water, we can read the ruins on the land of New Jersey area, like where there's a bunch of little lakes and stuff. Check it out, Google Earth style. Zoom in and tilt it to where east is north, and then you'll see all these ruins written in the land that are filled up with water.
Well, as we've talked about before, we know that they use the oceans to store the cables for the communication cables. So, because water moves the information, and that's how it is moved. That's what we are. We're information vessels. We store the water, we regurgitate, we, share, that type of thing. So the water is also used for the storage of your, all your hard drives and stuff like that. All your information for your computers are all stored within a cloud, which is, again, come back to water. So I feel like as the structures break down and things are revealed, we're going to see the old world water and electricity systems, because obviously I know some towns around me, they've still got evidence of old world structure in the sense of the hydroelectrical systems, like the big moving wheels that ran the electricity within the towns, and then all of a sudden they got rid of that and put power lines up and electricity wires, but we're aware that that wasn't the case back in the day, and we're aware that all these houses had antennas and that type of thing for moving the information and communication. So
yeah, and it looks kind of like a Jetsons antenna. You know, remember that cartoon where it has like it has like plates, and it looks kind of like almost like it's a slender triangle, whatever that shape is. Geometry people tell me, because I don't know. And then there's
like a
like plates.
pyramid.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's cone. Yeah. Anyway, but this shape is in the cartoon for a reason. We're supposed to still get to have access to that knowledge, just not really understanding the reference of it. But I've seen that all over the place too, Jeanette. Like it's everywhere. Like all this Tartarian. I mean, the post office is a Tartarian building.
So is mine.
Yeah, why is it always a government building, right? The ones that are being allowed to. Oh, but something else has been happening. They've been taking so in 1964, for some reason, that year keeps popping up over and over again, is they put all these facades on the outside of these buildings, and they just covered them up with this nasty plaster stuff, and it's falling off. It's falling off, and people are seeing behind it these elaborate Tartarian, I mean, exquisitely precise, beautiful, like with panels this big for the whole skyscraper. And each panel has like detailed, like recessed in marble, like scenes. You could read a whole story on a building. That's what they were for back then. For some reason, like, is that the history of the family? I don't know why that. It's cool though.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, the glyphs would have been the scenes that were depicted in the top of the buildings. With the facades, they've really done a number on our minds though, because you look at those facades and you think, oh, they're old, right? And I know firsthand exactly what you're talking about, because I happened to be in Brisbane when they were pulling off the front of one of the buildings. So me and the husband went, I said, come and have a look. Let's have a look to see what they're doing. So you could actually see the facade, and it was probably an inch or so thick, maybe two, let's say 2 inches thick. And it was like a sandstone looking tile that they were sticking on top of the old world behind it. So it's interesting because they've left ones over here. So, you can see them. You can see all the different scenes in the top, including some of the stuff that they've etched into the top. You just go, there's no reason for that to be etched into the top of a building in Australia. It does not make sense. And then, 3 buildings over, they've put all the facade all over. They've wanted to hide it so that you can't see it. So I feel like the ones that they've hidden have got more detail that they cannot explain on top of like the the ones that they've left opened. It's really interesting, that facade stuff, and how they've done that everywhere around the world.
Yeah, and why they chose which ones to not cover up and all that stuff. Like, that's a rabbit hole and a half right there. Like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the fact that I know we switched to Tartaria again. It's just something that happens right now.
It's the water. It goes together. We know that it all goes together, because that's obviously how the old world infrastructure worked, was on the water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, even just walking through the bush here the other day, I could see where the old river actually went through the bush, and we were drawn to this rock, and we walked up to it, and there was old cement, and it looks like an old building made of stone and old time cement. It would have been hundreds of years old, but just the foundations sitting on a rock. And I'm like, oh, this is some sort of ancient structure just hiding in the bush, and they're everywhere. Just, yeah, random bits that you wouldn't notice.
And what is the deal with fountains? There's always fountains, and they're connected to the well, and there's such intricacy. But if you look, usually it's the fountain or the well where you can find, like, anytime that there's anything to learn about the land, that if this land was, not destroyed from its earlier state, it'll tell you what to do with the land. It'll tell you where locations, where to go to find certain things about the, like, it's where I live in the world of caves and tunnels. Like, it's crazy here. There's so many caves here, and you never know. That's my thing, though, is like, it's like, what's in there? I got a little person to think about these days. It used to be like, I would be like first one in those types of things, but it's like there's and they always have this natural stalagmite, stalactite dripping. They're like, there's crystals. You go far enough in some places, it's like you could see the glow of the white of the crystal, but like the this is it's some of this stuff is obviously, it's naturally occurring because it's created when all of what's required is present. But what's fascinating to me is it implies there was an initiator, that there was somebody who started it, and do you mind, Cara, if I tell people about your your thing that you started? Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
And the fact that you're called, so Cara has a YouTube channel. It's called The Water Bear, right?
Yeah, it was something I was playing in water, and it was something that come to me a couple of years ago, but I've just recently done it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna do something real quick. There's always somebody. Okay, there we go. So, there's I lost my train of thought. Please excuse me. What were I had to do something.
Water bearer. I think you're talking about water.
Oh yeah, the
bearer,
water
maybe?
bearer. So what is it that made you choose this word, this name for your channel?
Well, it was working with my own water, I guess. Yeah, that was a lot of my path was
There we go.
yeah, having a clear passage to sail on, and having a clear vessel, and the water comes so much into that. We were guided to do a lot of water healing, the boys and I. My son always resonates with the water planet, and water's been a big part of my life, I guess. And obviously the second M's, the two M's that come on all of our hands, like just seem overnight. So that's where the symbol come from. But yeah, there's just so much in water. I could talk forever about water bending. My son's actually started practicing water bending, and he said he actually got it a little bit the other day.
That's awesome.
So that was exciting. and we all water bend. We
do.
So
This is my daughter actually asked me to talk about that today. She's like, don't forget to mention, because she's very much a fan of Avatar and all of the different stuff that's coming through, and the stuff to do with like Poseidon also, because we were watching the show Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, and he was water bending, like, and that was something that she pointed out. I find that to be Really interesting.
Well, that's what we'd be doing as we
Yeah.
meditate, and it would be, we're 70% water. That would be the main element that we'd be tapping into, as we meditate. And someone that's got planets in Scorpio, I know about water. So, yeah.
It's 5 planets.
Yeah, lucky, hey. That's my lifetime to work through is definitely the waters. It's been a big part of my journey. Dolphins, I'm so connected with those. I have been, since I can remember. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting because I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with the Project Dolphin a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you've heard about that.
No.
It was in the 1960s. The CIA used dolphins to sense when vessels were coming in and out of the water. So when they sense a submarine from, not their own submarines, let's say, they were teaching dolphins. Well, they were using dolphins to be able to sense, enemy coming into the waters.
Yeah.
And there is even talk that they used that maybe Russia used them at the beginning of the Ukraine war.
That was real.
Yeah.
I saw
Yeah, it's
cartoon
real.
references to this, but
No, it's real.
they had like machine guns on their heads. It was like supposed to be like an
No, not
example,
to
a
that
parody of,
extent.
it's a
Yeah,
parody.
yeah. It's more like the radio signal type thing, but because of their sonar, because they're so in tune to the movement, the wave movements, that
Mhm.
they were learning their calls, their all their different sounds they made, and were able to work out when they were on alert, when they were calm. So the water animals they've used to actually create a lot of the sonar stuff, and obviously to be able to put the wavelength stuff into, there's biometric stuff within a lot of apps and stuff like that. And a lot of it's come from the study of our water animals, because obviously we're water and they want to know how signals interact with us.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's against international law. There's not a lot of international laws, really, you know. And one of them, because the international waters of the oceans, there's like those between places where a lot of these criminal activities type things happen. Um, well, they made it so you can't do it there either. That's what they're saying. You're not allowed to talk to dolphins. It's against the law. And it feels to me a lot like, like the early 20s. I get to say the early 20s now. I just realized it. Um, I prefer that instead of saying 2020. I don't know what. I don't want to say 2020 anymore. You know what I mean? Anyway, um, is that there was well, first of all, as people started to communicate with these dolphins, the intelligence of these dolphins, made it so we were getting some type of assistance. Anyway, now it's against the law. It is against the law, and suddenly the dolphins started doing all these crazy things. They started the whales are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean having a big old party, and and they travel in pods, yeah, but we're talking about the biggest, like, once in a lifetime family reunion style size gathering. We're not talking about, thousands and thousands instead of 5 like you're used to. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm just making up random numbers. They're collecting and congregating in the Pacific, and the fact that in 2020, that's what I was going to say. I've forgotten that part. I'm like, when was I even bringing 2020 up? There was all that stuff of like fact checked and false, deemed unworthy of your attention, kind of thing. That was what I would click. That was what I would read. I wasn't reading any of the other, propaganda that was on the pages, and so when they say, you're not allowed to talk to this thing, what? Like, first of all, don't tell me what to do. But then also, why?
Why? Yeah. What's the importance?
Why now?
Yeah, and why are you saying it? Like, why are you drawing my attention to the fact that I'm not allowed to do this now?
Yeah.
That's so interesting because they were speaking so loudly at that time. Around 2020 is where I sold my home, and I was living, I had a shack on the beach. So I was on the ocean, and I would have whales jump out the front of my home, and they would come speak to me, and dolphins. And around 2020, I was told to move and sell my home, which I was very reluctant to do, and move to the bush. And the ocean was speaking so loudly. And isn't that funny that,
Yeah.
that they put that call out around that time?
They start speaking loudly, and then all of a sudden, now you're not allowed to do it. I want to know who it was that tipped that scale that made that, like, the why for that decision to occur. Like, what kind of knowledge was passed? You know what I mean?
Yeah. What kind of bill was passed on the dolphins? Like. The first thing I think of is Antarctica for some reason, some kind of research. I don't know. It's the first thing that popped in my head. I laughed when you're talking about the whales. The first thing I thought was like a union meeting, like all the delegates of all the corners unite for a stop work.
No more cruelty.
We're on strike.
Little sign and stuff.
It might get to that. They might start pushing back the animals. We might start seeing that sort of, it's who cares about your law and not touching animals or whatever. That they will make their presence known, and they won't be able to stop them.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's so true. That's so true. I mean, they were doing that all last year, where big fur seal, elephant seals, the real big ones, were just laying in the middle of the road, so no one could go to work or do anything. And they're just laying down the law. It's funny.
I've seen a lot of
big highways were shut.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of whales up even my way. Like, they do come about an hour south of where I live. That's where they come up to play for winter, but they went further last year because the waters were so cold. So, and I have not seen them for over 20 years this far up the coast. Yeah. So.
Wow. That's been happening up in the UK area too, like England and Scotland and Ireland. It's cold up there. You go up there, you're going to be cold. Especially if you get wet, you know what I mean? And so they don't typically get this type of marine life, and the amount of dolphins that they've gotten lately, reports of seeing them recently, is just fascinating. I gotta say this though, Natasha, was so funny. The chair recognizes the blowfish from the rape delegation, like this, like this whole... And when I read that, I just saw all of them. I mean, I saw like shrimp standing up, talking with little glasses on and the clipboard, like I saw the whole thing in that quick second. So if you were saying something important and I was laughing, please don't take it personal. I was reading that. And seeing a lot of it.
A lot of visuals.
But they were all like old English, so they had like the wigs on and stuff, like the gray wig. The court recognized.
It's funny because it's probably true.
Right. That's what I mean. They're going to start pushing back. So, they start getting their lawyer hats on and you're like,
Yeah. And something else too is the number of beached marine life has skyrocketed consecutively since 2021. I want to say like June, July 2021 was around the time that first occurrence happened. Look it up. I might be wrong. Anyway, and since then it's been spiking every year, in this one window of time, and they always what did they call it? Beach themselves, which I think is really interesting. It's called beached. I was born breach, and so it kind of fits that whole, like, that means backwards. I don't know what it means, but that's what the result is. The baby's coming out legs first, which is what I did. Anyway, is that they're beaching now I want to say breach. They're beaching themselves when it's clear there's someone there to put them back in the water. Most of the time, you're not finding mortality associated. Not most of the time. Most of these beachings are happening where people can at least, dump water on the whale until people can come and figure out how to pull them back in the water again, or it's these dolphins that are being picked up and carried. I'm surprised actually by the frequency, the number of people who are taking video of putting not just dolphins and stuff, but like stingrays, and I mean just hammerhead sharks, and just all these different. They're trying to get our attention. They're telling us, look at something. What are we missing? We're missing where they come from. There's something going on here. Like, I don't think it's scary, but they're telling us. They're trying to get our attention. What do you think they're trying to get our attention for?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I thought the other day was walking along a beach and there was a sardine that had washed up on the beach. And yeah, I just thought about what you said because I probably hadn't thought more deeply into it. But it was, that's the direct current to Antarctica where it washed up. It's at Safety Cove Beach. And yeah, it's just like a direct link. So, yeah, I guess there's definitely something going on there for sure for it to being washed up on and being beached on the south.
There's a phenomenon called SMOC. I'm sorry, were you clearing your throat to talk again, or did I cut you off?
I was done.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to be sure. There's a thing about low salinity in Antarctica oceans, waters. Like usually, it's very like it's fresh water, spring water, right? That's melting or whatever. And this measurement is called the SMOC. When I heard it, I kept seeing Smaug, the dragon, in Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, one of those kind of type of movies. But they're it's a point of conversation right now because they're feeling like it's indicative to other underlying land shifting stuff that we're maybe more aware of than we realize, but in mainstream media it's still not quite brought up very much. But it was something that was brought up today. I hadn't heard about it, or it hadn't been brought up, and they're like, hey, this is something that's right now affecting things for us, and that this fresh water is mixing in a different way with the oceanic water, with the salty water, and then there's Tiamat. Tiamat is this goddess who is Titania. I actually did look it up a bit more. And there's a bit more in depth there, but the story that they tell is she is the bringer of the salt water. And with it too, she brought the ability for these other beings to live on this planet. Whereas not very long ago, before this happened, this would be around the time we could call it the deluge, you could walk across distances, like the way that Australia was connected to the American continent, North America, and the fact that the Amazon people or the Mayans were able to migrate here where I live, and they would do it regularly, and they would walk. And there's no way someone's going to walk through all of the South America that you see of South America to get to this. I mean, as far as I could tell, but they would walk. How? Where did they walk? Well, there's something missing. The Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf here at the base of Texas, is a Gulf that used to be a crater. And that's why there's so much salt built up right there. It's been boiled down to 8 miles long or longer. I can't remember. Thick with salt because of that hot source that came in. And maybe, do you think that was when it broke off? Like, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, there was multiple occurrences, I think. Multiple breaks.
Well, as you said, yeah. Well, Titania is linked to Uranus. I think that's one of the daughters of Uranus, or Uranus, as you want to say it. Sorry, that's how we say it. Especially with the rain code and the water code, we've definitely been making a habit of saying it, because there's obviously a lot within that, and then linking that to the Titanic, Titania. Like, how does that then, that's obviously got a resonance. And then, as I said before, Bermuda Triangle is called the Great Sound. There's all this linkage that it all comes back to water, us as a body of vessel. Many stories talk about walking across land bridges, or, we're all of the one, because, when you break it right down, there is only so much DNA pairing that can occur, so that's why it's so confusing and convoluted, and that's why we're all so confused, because of the fact that it makes sense on one level, but then it doesn't make sense when you look at the history books and the stories and stuff like that. But the wording and how we pronounce things does make a difference, and I do think that things get changed so that we cannot remember.
The Tower of Babel thing. Like, it's actually just as, look, go ahead in just a second. I just want to point this out. Look what Joshua said. I just realized that Antarctica and Tartaria are spelled quite similarly.
Same, yeah.
Similar.
That is really cool. I never noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
I just
I
thought.
Go.
You go.
No, I was going to say, it comes back down to Tartar and Tartan. It's Scottish. There's a big connection there as well. So anyway, go, Cara.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of code in that, because all the tartans are different lines, different rays of colour they bring in different directions.
They mean all different things.
They do. Whereas the Celtics, like, we tend to use more curves. I've got a tattoo of my family crest on the back of my leg, and it's just all the, the Celtic, lines, and it's like two snakes, I guess, that go through and make the family crest, and it goes all the way through. But it's interesting. Yeah, I just guess there's something in that with the Tartarus, with the lines and the colours, and with the Celtic with the waves. Two different, but both important.
Yeah. there's some super big significance regarding the tartan. We haven't even like this is like I'm not convinced I'm going to go very further into it just because we only have like 15 minutes left. But this is a big topic. This is a one near and dear to my heart. Like there's a lot that I've been. One of my earliest memories have to do with Ireland, and it has nothing to do with this incarnation at all. Maybe in the way that it's assisting me in some things with knowledge or whatever. But anyway, there's a lot about this, and the fact that the witch trials just were honored in receiving a tartan that had significant numbers and importance to the dates and those who lost their lives and stuff. It was like a I'm sorry almost is what it felt like to me. And then also a mourning from those of the granddaughters of the burned witches, kind of story, and what I find to be very significant is that those granddaughters that we are reincarnation of the grandmothers. You know what I mean? And it's like that's why we have this roar now, where this like, you know what? I understand you're thirsty for the 17th time, but it's bedtime. Like that kind of a roar. And I'm not gonna be an asshole, but no, you're not crossing my path. You're not stepping on my toes anymore. And I find it to be very succinct to this Artemis energy coming in. She's initiated in this buck moon that we're having, and this particular flow of the ocean tides that we're expected to have during this buck moon. And so it's and the fact we just had Artemis Day that really like kicked off all of this stuff that we've been doing lately. Holy cow. It's crazy how they're all so linked.
Yeah, I love that so much. You made me think of the first time I read the International Declaration of Human Rights, and it just warmed my heart to think of, burned witches or, anybody that's been judged or, prosecuted. And then we actually have this written law now that we have rights to exist, to purely exist. And it gave me so much strength, that roar, like you said, in that lifetime, to go, wow, like we have rights like we've never had them before, and free will. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Right. Yeah. And it's exactly how it's supposed to be. Like as soon as we stop trying to control it, it just, speaking of flowing like water, right? You're not the banks, you're the water itself. Just I want to point something out. I saw this too, and people are talking about this a lot right now. The way that this particular flood occurred, it is the flooding is doing the same crossing that happened with the eclipses. Like it's like it's identical to it, in fact. And so has a series of storms that I've been watching since then. Like it almost always follows the same path. We had like the hurricane that went through, and we had and it's drawing the same paths.
I'm seeing plasma and like crop circles, so I'm thinking it's doing a pattern.
I'm seeing blue inner portals, like blue inner water portals opening up. So yeah, that's a connection to the two, from as above, so below.
Yeah,
the crop circles and the inner portals, and that's a lot of exciting activation. That's all things coming online.
Yeah,
like we know one crystal is definitely raised, and the other three are coming now. So
they're in motion.
their emotion. It's
And I
exciting.
just think Cancer's ruling the moon, so water, and it's in the sun sign. So there's definitely something within that too, isn't there? The fact that it's like plasma again. So
Yeah.
And Neptune just went retrograde on July 4th. Neptune is Poseidon and Aries / Artemis. Adding that, go ahead.
As above, so below. It's
yeah, it's just bringing in the waters, isn't it? It's all very significant. You can see the patterning. It's just trying to decode it for what it is. You know what I mean? And it could be just that you're meant to remember.
Yeah. Water remembers. That's the biggest part about that early 20s. I'm so happy to say that. I don't want to say 2020, and I keep saying it. Is that it was about all of this stuff was coming in about the water and the memory and the code and the crystal of the water is like the crystal that you see in like these microscopic memory devices for technology and so on. And at that same time, so too was released Frozen 2. And that particular movie, not only did it have the elementals, the dragon, the little, not a dragon exactly, he was like some kind of lizard, but he was fire. And the wind and all that was really important and significant. I don't want to forget to not notice it. The water was contained, trapped on purpose by this dam. And over through the movie, Olaf kept talking about the water having memories to the point where they made a point to make it sound like they're really tired of hearing about it. And like, then in order to save the day, you know, they had to break a dam. They had to break this dam and release the water because the water was trapped, just like that tree, the gum tree that asked you, Cara, and it then said, hey, my friend, my partner, myself. They're probably connected through their root system as a single being in a lot of ways. You know, is hurting over here. Please help. You know, and the same thing is done, and it's as above, so below. You know, it's you find us this communication going on.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
so true. It's so true. I guess that's with all the beings that talk to us, you know, that our waters feel each other. And I know when I'm stressed or anxious, I tense up, and that kind of is damming my own waters in a
Yeah.
way. You know, the more I relax, I let it flow, and the water remembers. And the beings, they feel my water, like the tree felt the other tree. You know, all these beings are so empathic of us because, you know, we are the water. We're all that light, and we
Yeah.
feel each other. And yeah, even though things are hard, there's more help. There's more light. So, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
grateful for the assistance to keep my waters flowing.
Yeah. It's very significant that the memory of the water is brought up so often right now because we are all being reunited with our own memory, which goes back to the hippocampus again and cycles it all. See, it all just goes like this. You know, and like you're like interlinking rabbit holes and such. But like Jeanette, you mentioned earlier, this hippocampus stuff, you know, and the reunion with your memory long term and stuff, like having to do with releasing of the water that's been contained in our bodies too. Have any of you guys been noticing the fluctuation in your weight or body mass again? Like, has it been changing again?
Yeah.
Because Spirit said that has to do with the dumping and refilling of the water. It's like old water that
Some
you go
days you feel
dump
like,
out.
yeah, you retain it. Yeah, sometimes you feel like your body's retaining it. And then other days you feel like, I've lost 5 kilos, as we say, you know, and it's like nothing's happened. Like the body hasn't changed, but sometimes it feels like it's swollen. It's retaining. It's a bit like the lagoons. It's retaining like little pockets of water within the body, and then you feel like it releases, and then it's able to move. That's my experience.
Yeah, you made me think of a ship. Like how it lets its ballast out when it's either full or empty. And for the seas, like if the seas are a bit more rougher, we're going to have more ballast to keep us down and solid in the water. But when the seas are more calmer, we're not going to have as much ballast. We're going to have to let our waters out because it's calmer. We don't need as much to keep us balanced, a center balance point.
Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like and then as we dump, that's something that's useful to be aware of for any of us. So too does the emotion that's associated with that time, like that time of your life. Like, so when we reach a weight, like however much, it's got nothing to do with like body image and visual or self, and it's just, this is the mass that we are at this time. And then when we have gained or lost weight and then return to that particular location, that body mass, that activates the emotions that were being experienced at that time. Like, think about how many people are like returning to the body mass of the initial windows of lockdown. That would suck. Like, I know that we've released the different layers of emotion from different periods of our lives. Like, you can't obviously get back down to like infant weight, you know what I mean? But like, a really, really young version of you. But it's typically, that's not a window we need to even worry about. Like, it's this, full capacity mass that, and so that's what I believe very much why, on top of the fact that why we're having such emotional purging right now, on top of the fact that there's also an unwept mourning that needs to happen. There's a lot of people all over the planet that don't want, they want the awakening to occur. They want the things that are associated with that, but they don't want to say goodbye to who they've known themselves to be all this time. There's parts about this world that, whether or not they were uncomfortable, they're expected, they're predictable, and there's this thing that you don't have to have a reason why an emotion's there. Just feel it. Emotions are water. They need to flow. They're energy and motion. They need to go. They don't need to stay, and so as these emotions come up, acknowledge them, let yourself feel them, and just let them go. You don't have to know why they're there. Sometimes we really think it's important, and I don't find it to be important in the slightest. So, any of you guys feeling those types of surges in energy right now?
Yeah.
Like emotional purging?
Yeah, I've felt a lot of ups and downs, emotional purging. Yeah, just being gentle with myself, and it's really important.
I feel like that is what's happening to everybody, whether it's purging because you're purging, or people are purging through anger, very quick to ignite, and that again, it's releasing it from the body. I mean, obviously, if you can do it without that type of intensity, great, but sometimes you need that intensity too to push it out of the body. So I found that while I'm pretty stable, things are very from moment to moment. So you can sort of ride the wave until you realise, hang on, nothing's changed. Why am I now feeling a little bit like off kilter? Like, what is that? And then recognize it, that okay, there's something's hitting my body of influence here. Like, what is it? And just look at it for what it is. And sometimes you won't know what it is, and sometimes you're not meant to know what it is. But I feel like everybody at the moment is going through the things are disconnecting. So without you even trying, it's happening. And then you can just see that so many things are unraveling that it's hard to actually pinpoint what actually you are feeling sometimes, because so many things are unraveling. So definitely I feel like whether it's the cancer with the water, and it's just, an automatic response to us interacting with the influences that are presenting themselves. I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like I don't think there's anyone not going through some sort of something.
Yeah. And just to honor it and release it, let it go. I'm happy to hear that we're all on the same experience, even when it feels like I'm glad you're miserable. It's not that, it's just good to hear that we're not alone, and that everybody else, no matter where we are on the planet, no matter the age group, gender, so on and so forth, we simultaneously experience, just like the trees that were brought up earlier, and I do actually have to wind this up. I forgot.
Yes.
We have a show, or not a show, but a group starting in an hour, a little under an hour almost, about like 57 minutes from now. So we normally do have our Zoom meeting now. It's not going to be. It's going to be in an hour. So if you want to join us, it's free. There's a link in the description. They're not in the description, but in the community section of the YouTube channel, as well as in the Telegram groups. And so I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you both so very much for coming. This was a great conversation. I really super enjoyed it. It didn't feel like it was that long. We got to go now, though.
Thank you. I have enjoyed myself.
Same. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say emotions are like waves. You can't stop them from coming, but you can choose which one you want to surf.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yep.
You decide. Yeah. Like Maddie's always jumping through the house singing, "Be what you want to be and do." Like, that's just, her thing, and I feel very much that if we can be who we want to be and what we want to be and do what we want to do. And once we kind of like spin out for a minute, like the kid in the candy store, we realize what we're doing is what we want to do. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to have these kinds of conversations. I want to, so we're creating.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do enjoy having these conversations. So thank you. And thank you to the audience as well for tuning in.
And it was called streaming. That's all different. Okay,
of course.
I'm out. I'm sending y'all love. Bye.
Thank you. See ya. Bye.
Blessings.